You ever have that feeling like something's just off? Like the world around you hasn't changed, but something lurking in the background is watching, waiting? I had that feeling once, and I ignored it. I was working late that night, the last shift at the retail store. It was a small place, just a clothing boutique in a strip mall that never got too busy. By the time I clocked out, it was nearly midnight. I remember wrapping my scarf around my neck, stepping outside, and seeing my breath curl into the cold air. The parking lot was nearly empty. Just my car, a few streetlights humming with flickering bulbs, and a single van parked a few spaces away. I didn't remember seeing it when I arrived. It was one of those old white cargo vans, the kind with no windows on the sides. Rust hugged the edges of its doors, and the back bumper hung slightly off kilter. Something about it made my stomach twist, but I told myself I was being paranoid. After all, it was just a van. I adjusted my purse on my shoulder and walked toward my car. My boots clicked against the pavement, too loud in the empty lot. That was when I heard it. Click. A soft metallic sound, like a lock sliding open. I stopped mid-step. My breath hitched. The van was still, no movement, no sign of anyone inside. I swallowed hard and forced myself forward. Just get in the car, lock the doors, go home. Simple. But when I reached my driver's side door and went to unlock it, something changed. The air felt thicker, heavier, like I was suddenly submerged in something invisible and suffocating. I slid into my seat, locked the doors, and took a deep breath. Then, out of habit, I glanced up. The van's side door was open, just slightly. I sucked in a sharp breath. I was sure, absolutely sure. It had been closed before. A shape shifted inside. A shadow, barely visible in the dim light. My pulse pounded. Maybe it was just someone sleeping in there. Maybe a homeless person trying to stay warm. But the part of my brain that kept me alive, the instinct buried deep in my bones, was screaming at me to leave. I reached for my keys. My hands were shaking. I fumbled them, dropped them onto the floor. And then, the passenger door handle jiggled. I froze. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't the wind. Someone was trying to get in. My fingers scrambled for the keys. My breathing turned ragged, shallow. My pulse thumped in my ears. And then a whisper, low, smooth, too close. Just open the door. I sucked in a breath so sharp it felt like it cut my throat. The whisper didn't sound desperate or pleading. It sounded amused, like whoever was out there knew exactly how scared I was. I grabbed my keys and shoved them into the ignition. My hands were slick with sweat. The engine roared to life. Then, my headlights flickered. The bulbs dimmed for a second, just long enough for the darkness to stretch, just long enough to make me feel like something moved. And then the van's sliding door, slowly, dragged, open. I slammed my car into reverse and stomped on the gas. My tires screeched as I whipped backward, jerking the wheel wildly. In the rearview mirror, I saw it. A figure standing in the open van door. Not lunging, not chasing, just watching. I tore out of the parking lot, heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't even check the street. I just drove, fast, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Then I saw it. The van's headlights in my mirror. They pulled out onto the road behind me. Not speeding, not aggressive, just following. I took the next turn too fast, my tires skidding over ice. My stomach clenched, but I didn't slow down. I turned again and again, desperate to lose them. But every time I looked back, they were still there. Close, patient. I spotted a police station up ahead. The red and blue lights from a parked cruiser glowed in the night. Hope surged through my chest. I veered into the lot and pulled right up to the entrance, slamming on the brakes. I turned to look behind me. The van, stopped at the lot's edge. For a moment, I thought they'd keep coming, that they'd try to get me even here, but they didn't. Instead, the van slowly reversed. And then, it was gone. I stumbled inside the station, breathless, shaking. The officer at the desk looked up, startled, and I told him everything. The van, the whisper, the pursuit. They took my statement, sent out a patrol car. They found nothing. The van was gone. For days, I kept checking my mirrors when I drove, watching for the glint of headlights too steady, too persistent. And then, about a week later, I saw something on the news. A woman had gone missing. She'd been found, locked inside the back of a white cargo van. She was still alive. Barely. And the suspect? Still out there. I don't know if it was the same van. I don't know if it was the same man. But I do know one thing. The night I left that parking lot, I wasn't supposed to escape. I've always been cautious. Comes from my dad drilling safety tips into me as a kid. Always check your back seat before getting in your car. Don't walk with both earbuds in. And for God's sake, always check underneath your car at night. That last one used to seem excessive, until the night I found someone waiting for me. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my late nights at work. I'd stayed back, finishing reports in my office while the building emptied out. By the time I finally packed up, it was close to midnight. The parking lot was nearly deserted, just a few scattered cars left behind. The overhead lights flickered every so often, buzzing softly in the quiet night. I stepped outside, zipped up my jacket against the cold, and started toward my car. It wasn't far, 5th row, end of the lane. A few other cars were nearby, but I didn't see anyone else around. That was when I got that feeling. You know the one. Like when you're walking alone, and suddenly, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, like something is off. I slowed down without thinking, let my eyes sweep over the lot. Nothing looked unusual. No movement, no weird shadows. Just rows of cars under pale streetlights. Still, my gut told me to check. So, before I reached my car, I bent down, just enough to peek underneath, and froze. A pair of shoes, worn-out sneakers, the kind with the soles peeling, were sticking out from beneath my car. Someone was under there. My pulse slammed into my throat. I stayed perfectly still. Who the hell hides under a stranger's car? Was it some drunk passed out? A homeless guy trying to stay warm? Or something worse? I backed up slowly, trying to act normal, pretending I hadn't seen anything. Maybe if I ignored it, they'd just stay there. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and clicked the unlock button. The car beeped. And that's when I saw it. The shoes shifted. Not much, just a twitch, like whoever was under there was repositioning themselves. Waiting. My stomach clenched. I tried to think. If I got in the car, would they grab my ankle? Pull me under? No, I couldn't get in yet. I forced myself to move casually. Stepped a few feet away, pretending to check my phone. I opened the camera, switched to photo mode, and, without looking, snapped a picture of my car. Then I zoomed in, and nearly dropped my phone. A hand. Peeking out from the shadows, gripping the undercarriage, fingers curled, tensed, like they were ready to spring. A wave of cold panic rolled through me. What was I supposed to do? Run? Call for help? No, if I ran, I'd turn my back on them. And if they had a knife, I wouldn't stand a chance. I needed to act like I wasn't afraid. I shoved my phone back in my pocket and took a slow step closer. My heart was hammering so loud I could barely hear my own voice. Hey. Silence. I forced myself to stay calm. louder this time. "I see you." For a moment, nothing happened, and then a low, guttural chuckle, not friendly, not nervous, amused. My mouth went dry. Who laughs when they've been caught? I clenched my keys in my fist, ready to bolt, but before I could move, the hand twitched. And then, in one fluid motion, the figure slid out from beneath the car. I froze, unable to breathe. He was fast. Too fast, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. I only caught a glimpse. Greasy hair, dark hoodie, eyes that locked onto mine like a predator spotting prey. I staggered back, every instinct screaming at me to run. But the guy just crouched there, grinning. And then, just as suddenly, he bolted. He spun on his heels and sprinted. Not toward me, toward the trees at the edge of the lot. I didn't move, couldn't breathe. I just watched as he disappeared into the darkness, like he'd never been there at all. It took a full minute before I snapped out of it. I fumbled with my keys, yanked my car door open, and threw myself inside. The doors locked automatically. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. I started the engine, slammed the car into drive, and peeled out of the lot without looking back. I didn't stop until I was home. Didn't sleep that night either. The next morning, I called security at work, told them what happened. They checked the cameras, and that's when they found it. The man had been under my car for almost 2 hours. 2 hours. Just lying there, waiting. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't checked, if I'd just walked up, gotten in like normal. But I do know one thing, I always check now, and you should too. I worked the night shift at a parking garage for 6 years. Nothing exciting ever happened. No break-ins, no accidents. Just an empty concrete maze, humming with flickering lights and the occasional echo of a distant car alarm. Most nights, I sat in my booth, watched the monitors, and counted the hours. But one night, something changed, and I still don't know if I imagined it, or if it's still out there, waiting for me to come back. It started at 2:13 a.m. I remember the time exactly because I had just checked the clock, counting down the minutes till my shift ended. That's when I saw him, a man, standing completely still on level 3. At first, I thought nothing of it. Maybe he was waiting for someone. Maybe he lost his car. But then I realized something strange. He had been there for a while, long enough that I should have noticed him before. I switched cameras, zoomed in. He didn't move, didn't check his phone, didn't pace, didn't even shift his weight from foot to foot, just stood there, facing the camera, like he was waiting for something, or someone. I grabbed my radio. "Hey, base? You got eyes on level 3? Static." I tried again, nothing. A weird chill crawled up my back. I checked my phone. No signal. That was unusual. The reception was bad in the lower levels, but up here, it usually worked fine. I looked back at the monitor. The man was still there. Same spot, same posture. I stared at the screen, waiting for him to move. Blink, shift, anything, nothing. I glanced at the clock. 2:34 a.m. He had been standing there for over an hour, and I hadn't noticed. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I grabbed my flashlight and keys. As I stepped onto level 3, the air felt wrong. Too thick, too still. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, casting sickly yellow patches on the concrete. I turned the corner, and there he was. Exactly where I saw him on the monitor. I froze. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening for something. But his face was wrong. The skin was too smooth, like a mannequin's. His mouth was slightly open, but there was no breath, no sound, nothing. I cleared my throat, gripping my flashlight tighter. "Sir, you lost?" No response. "Sir?" Still nothing. I took a hesitant step forward, and then he moved. Not like a normal person, not a twitch, not a shuffle. He glided. 1 second, he was standing still. The next, he was closer. No footsteps, no sound, just closer. My stomach clenched. I stepped back, gripping my radio. "This is Officer Daniels, requesting backup on level 3. I need immediate." Static. Not normal static. This was different. The sound shifted. I heard something underneath the static, a whisper. My name. My blood turned to ice. I spun around, but there was no one there. When I turned back, he was even closer. I bolted, ran for the stairs, but no matter which turn I took, I kept ending up back on level 3. The signs, the pillars, all the same. I wasn't getting out, and each time I turned a corner, he was closer. Until the last turn, I nearly crashed into him. He was right there, his face inches from mine, his mouth stretched wider, too wide. And then, darkness. I woke up in my security booth, like nothing had happened. The monitors showed an empty garage, no man, no movement. I checked my watch. It was an hour later, and I didn't remember anything after seeing his face. I didn't sleep the next day, didn't go back the next night, called in sick, then quit altogether. I never went back to that garage, but sometimes, late at night, I check security cams for random parking garages online, and sometimes, in the footage, I see him, still standing, still waiting, and I wonder, who is he waiting for? You ever feel like you're being watched? Not in the casual, someone glanced at you on the street kind of way. I mean, really watched. Like something is locked onto you, waiting for you to notice, daring you to react. That's what I felt that night. I work late shifts at a pharmacy. Nothing crazy, just stocking shelves, ringing up customers, cleaning up spills. It's boring, mostly. But the worst part? The parking lot. There's something unsettling about an empty parking lot after dark. It's too quiet, too still. The world shrinks, and suddenly, that walk from the store's bright entrance to your car feels 100 miles long. I always park close to the doors, but that night I had come in late, and the good spots were taken, so my car sat farther out, near the edge of the lot, where the security lights barely reach. I remember stepping outside and feeling the cold immediately. The kind that tightens around your ribs, makes your breath come out in short, misty puffs. I didn't notice the van at first, not until I was halfway to my car. It was white, old, parked a few spots down from mine, near the edge of the lot. The engine was running, low and steady. I don't know why, but that sent a chill through me. It wasn't the van itself, just some beat-up work vehicle, but the fact that no one was getting in or out. It was just sitting there, running. I glanced at the store behind me. The sliding doors had already locked for the night. The security guard, some retired guy who barely looked up from his crossword, was probably still inside. I turned back to the van. The driver's window was cracked open, just an inch, and then a whisper. I stopped cold. It was faint, just beneath the rumble of the engine, but it was there, a voice. "Hey," I swallowed, gripping my keys tighter. My feet suddenly felt heavy, like my body didn't want to take another step. The whisper came again. "Help me." I exhaled sharply, my breath fogging in front of me. The van's back window was tinted, but as I looked closer, I saw something move behind the glass. A shadow, a shape. Then a hand pressed against the inside of the window. Thin, pale, Fingers splayed wide. My stomach twisted. Someone was in there. Someone scared. I took a step closer before I could stop myself. My instincts were at war, one half screaming to run, the other rooted in place, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Are you okay?" I called out. My voice barely carried over the low hum of the van's engine. No answer. Then the driver's door swung open. A man stepped out. He moved too fast, like he had been waiting for me to react. The overhead lights barely touched his face, but what I could see, a grin. Wide, too wide, stretched like his skin didn't quite fit. My pulse slammed against my ribs. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I stumbled back, my legs finally working, but my keys slipped from my hand and hit the pavement with a dull clink. He took a step toward me, not running, not lunging, just walking. Slow, deliberate, like he knew I wouldn't get away. My breath came out in short, panicked gasps. I dropped to my knees, clawing for my keys, found them, fumbled, hands shaking too much to grip. Another step. I could hear his breathing now, slow and steady, like he wasn't worried, like he was enjoying this. I wrenched the keys into my palm, scrambled to my feet, and practically threw myself into my car. My hands were on the lock before I even shut the door. The moment it clicked, he stopped, just outside my window. His face was closer now. In the dim light, I could see his eyes, wide, unblinking. His grin never wavered. Then slowly, so damn slowly, he lifted a hand and knocked, just once. I shoved the key into the ignition. The car roared to life. I threw it in reverse, tires screeching against the pavement. My heart slammed against my ribs, every instinct screaming at me to go, go, go. I barely glanced at the rearview mirror as I sped toward the exit, but I saw just enough. The van's door shut, the engine revved, and then headlights. I didn't stop, didn't think, just drove. I took random turns, zigzagging through the empty streets, trying to lose whatever was behind me. But no matter how far I went, I could feel it, that pressure, like something was still watching. By the time I made it home, I was shaking so hard I could barely get the key in the door. My apartment felt foreign, unfamiliar. Every shadow seemed wrong. I didn't sleep that night, didn't even close my eyes. The next morning, I went outside to check my car, and there, on the back window, a handprint, pressed into the glass, smudged, like whoever left it had been dragged away. I don't go to that store anymore. Hell, I don't go anywhere alone at night. But sometimes, when I'm driving, I still see white vans, sitting in parking lots, engines running, and I wonder, is it him? Waiting? Watching? Or worse, looking for someone else?